Hello everybody, this is Howard the Teaser King, coming out with a little shorter videos. As you can see, I know my stuff and I like to talk about it. Today I'm going to just break down some conferences, so I'm going to do some shorter videos. I'm going to talk about the SEC and the Big Ten, basically just to get the flavor down on the teams. Let's start with the SEC. First I'll talk about the team and then I'll get into some details. So I'm just going to go down the list, kind of the order they're in from my Lindy's magazine, just because I need a point of reference. So here's my Lindy's and he breaks them down. Basically, he gives you a list, so I'm going to just follow that for now. So Alabama, they've lost their quarterback, got to replace him. They got 6 starters back on offense, 5 on defense. I like them as an under team. I think great defense. They'll find a running back. Quarterback, probably weak again. He can throw, but they never get the real superstar quarterback that Baylor gets, or that TCU gets, or Western Kentucky, or any of those teams. Average. Last year they were 35 points per game, and they gave up 15 for a total of 50. So you can see, like, they don't give up a lot of points. So you try to measure that with other defensive teams. So when two defensive teams, when Alabama plays LSU, you're going to want to play the game under. If LSU's favored, you want to take Alabama, but then you got to see how the quarterbacks are doing. So we'll get into that. Next is Tennessee. Good returning quarterback, high marks, 9 starters back offense, 8 on defense. I like them as an over team. They also scored 35 a game, and they gave up 20 for a 55 total, but with the quarterback back, I think they'll be pretty high scoring against the weaker teams. Against Alabama, no, it's not going to be a high scoring game, but against, Middle Tennessee or Kentucky or these smaller schools, watch them put up a lot of points. LSU, their quarterback's back, but he's a good runner. He's not a great passer. They got 8 offensive starters back and 9 defense. I look at them as an under. They got the great Fournette as the running back. Last year they were a 32-24, so even with Fournette, they only averaged 32 points a game, which is surprising. They gave up 24. I would expect their defense to be better. If their quarterback's better, then they can't key on Fournette, and that's how they lose to Alabama, and whoever they lose to, they just put 9-10 in the box, and the quarterback can't throw to these great receivers. So that's what's happening. I'm surprised their defense was that weak, but it's not always the defense when you give up points. The quarterback throws pick sixes or turnovers, they only got to go 20 yards. It's not the defense's fault. Next, LSU, best quarterback in the conference in Kelly. They're a little bit weaker with 4 returning starters, offense and defense. I give them an over. They scored 40 a game, gave up 22. So they're very explosive. I look for them to give Alabama all they want. They'll again be the dog against Alabama, and this is when you talk matchups what it is. Alabama's weak against a kind of mobile quarterback who can throw, which is what Kelly is. And you can look at the games that Alabama's lost. They lost to Kelly the last 2 years. They lost to Johnny Manziel 2 years. So when they get that kind of quarterback who can move around, they lost to Auburn in that one crazy game with the field goal. That's how they lose, because they're geared at stopping the run, basically. Or just a straight drop back passer, they can blitz them. But when a mobile quarterback comes in, they can't blitz them, or he eludes the blitz. Alabama's not that good. Georgia, their quarterback's back. 8 offense and 5 defense. They were kind of an over-under team. They got the new coach in from Alabama's defensive coordinator. And they were only at 26-16 yesterday. So they only scored 26 points, and they gave up 16, so I look at them more as an under team. Chubb was injured a lot, so if he plays, it's a little more offense. quarterback was average, nothing great. So again, they look more like a defensive team. Auburn, new quarterback, 6 offense and 6 defensive starters back. They're kind of an over and an under team right now. They only scored 27 a game, gave up 26 for 53. So if their quarterback has to play better and their defense, 6 starters back. So this is probably more of an over team unless they play like an Alabama. See, when you play the better defensive teams, they're going to play an under game. When they play the weaker defensive teams, it's going to be over. And that's why I kind of give you that category of this team, like Western Kentucky's an over team, or Akron's an under team, because you got to know what characteristic you're playing against. That's the key to the matchup. That's the key to the bet. If you don't know that, you can never bet an over-under, and it's very hard to bet the game because you don't know. It's just flipping a coin. Well, maybe they'll score on them. So you don't really know. Florida's next again. New quarterback, 4 offensive and 6 defensive starters back. Definitely an under team. They were 23 and 18 last year. That's 23 offense, 18 defense. So again, another another weak quarterback. Hard to understand why they don't have quarterbacks. And they all transfer out, and they all do well at other programs. And basically, I look for them again to be a strong defensive team. Now, keep in mind, when I'm giving you 6 returning starters on offense and 6 on defense, it's kind of a little bit of not real, because, as everybody knows, you're going to rotate in players. So they might not be a starter, but they played half the game, especially the defensive line. You're not just playing the 4 linemen, you're playing 8 or 9 deep. The offensive lineman's a little different. You're playing mostly 5, maybe you rotate in a guard or something. You're not changing your center and your tackles. So the offensive line is different when you only have 1. But the defense, I find, most of them all have experience anyway. And with all the injuries, it's kind of a meaningless thing, but this is something I'm going to say in the beginning of the year. Texas A&M, new quarterback, guy from Oklahoma who wasn't much at Oklahoma, 6 and 6 back. I got them. They're 27 points for and 22 against as their average last year. And if you remember, I think this coach came from Houston, where they were scoring a lot of points. All of a sudden he comes here and they only scored 27. Note, they have a very weak run defense. So when they play power running teams, Alabama, LSU, there you go. That could be a lock, LSU against A&M. They're going to run it down their throat. Auburn, Georgia with Chubb. Now again, with Ole Miss, they're more of a passing team. They might match up better, but against these power running teams, they're going to be in trouble. Let me just see the other comments. Like Ole Miss has a weak running game. Georgia, weak passing game. Strong linebackers. We'll get into that. Arkansas, new quarterback. Allen, I still think, should be the starter at Jacksonville. Not right now, but in 6-7 weeks when Bortles can't handle it. Allen's much better than Bortles. Watching Allen at Arkansas and Bortles at UCF, it's not even close. They only have 3 returning starters back, 9 on defense. They have a strong defense. They scored 36 a game, but that's with Allen and 2,000-yard running backs who are all gone. So their offense will probably drop a little. They had 27 points on defense, which is surprising. They were definitely an over last year. This year they have 9 guys back and a strong defense. They could be more of an under this year, more of a, we're going to run the ball and we're going to play defense. They're going to look like Wisconsin again. South Carolina, returning quarterback who stinks, weak. 4 offense and 5 defense returning starters. They're definitely an under team. They only scored 22 points a game, gave up 27. So again, it's good defense, no offense. Definitely an under bet against any decent team. Missouri, returning quarterbacks, terrible. They're going to go to a no huddle, so they might start scoring a little bit of points, but their quarterback and their running backs are gone, so who knows. 5 returners on offense, 8 on defense. Strong defense, definitely an under. Now listen to this. Here's a big program. 13 point. They average 13 points on offense, 16 points on defense. We're at 29. That's ridiculous. That's a beautiful under team. I know I pounded them under a lot last year. Mississippi State, a new quarterback. They lost Prescott. It's a big loss. Strong defense. I look for them to be more of an under. They were 34-23 last year. Kentucky, a new quarterback. They have 9 back on offense. Going to run more of a pro style. Strong secondary, but a weak defense, so they'll be good against passing teams. But they're still, they average 24 offense and 27 on defense. So, again, it's not an explosive team, but if they play the weaker out of conference, they could score more. Against the better teams in the SEC, they won't score a lot. And Vandy is the worst team in the league per Lindy's. We'll find out. Another new quarterback, 6 back on offense, 7 on defense. Strong defense. Good running back, Webb, and a very weak offense. They're another under team. They got a 15 offense and 21 points per game defense. Again, a 36. So when you total it up, you got teams like Ole Miss with the 62 total, 40 offense, 22 defense, and Tennessee with the 55. And then you got Arkansas, who was a 63 last year. And then you got like Missouri at a 29 and Vanderbilt at 36. Even Alabama is a 50, but they threw the ball well. So that's the SEC. I look at it as I think it depends on LSU's quarterback and Ole Miss's defense. If LSU gets a quarterback, they win it. If Ole Miss gets a defense, they win it. Alabama will have their normal offense. We'll see what happens. Tennessee should win the other side of the bracket. They're probably the best. Georgia will be good. Auburn, it's up to their quarterback. Florida, it's up to their quarterback. They got a great offensive coach, Florida. Arkansas could be there. And then just under on South Carolina, Missouri, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt. A lot of unders in this. Florida, LSU, and Alabama. So quite a bit of unders in the SEC. Now the Big Ten. Again, Ohio State's first. Great quarterback, Barrett back. Now they lost a lot to the draft. They have 3 returning starters, offense and defense. The spread offense will score a lot of points. Young team. They were 35-15 last year. 35. This is their average. 35 offense, 15 defense. I look for that offense to go into the 40s this year with Barrett full time, and their defense is never like an Alabama, LSU type of defense. It's always okay, but you can always run right at it. I mean, that's what Michigan State did to beat them. With no quarterback, Michigan State just ran it down their throats. Michigan will do that this year. That's how they lose. You can pound them right up. They got speed. They got a good secondary. But that's it. I mean, Barrett will run. They won't miss Elliott. They'll have other running backs. It's the system. So, I mean, that's just the way they are. They'll be very tough to beat. But you got Urban Meyer, and you got to figure out this spread offense. Once you figure that out, you can beat them. Michigan State knows how to beat them. They got Michigan next. New quarterback. I would imagine O'Korn from Houston. He'll be really good. 8 returning starters on offense, 5 on defense. But of the 5, you got Peppers and Jordan, 2 All-Americans. So, and then the other cornerback supposedly strong. So they have a really strong defense, but Harbaugh will get the offense going. And you got Betts, and you got a good line and a good running back. Betts is an All-American tight end. So, and then they got Chesu and another wide receiver. So they're set. They'll score a lot. Last year they were pretty much an under team initially because they couldn't score and they had a great defense. Then they started scoring and they became an over team. Their average was 31 offense, 16 defense. You can see they're very similar to Ohio State last year, even though I think both of them will improve. I think Michigan scores in the 40s, and again, it's a top 5 defense in the country, Michigan. So they're very, very strong. Next is Iowa, returning quarterback, 5 on offense, 8 on defense, solid defensive. They'll have a strong offensive line and quarterback. They lost a lot of wide receivers, so this will be interesting. Although I don't think wide receiver is that big of a deal in this level of college. Hard to say if they're an over or under. They're 31-point average on offense, 20 on defense. I guess they're slow because McCaffrey in the Rose Bowl just lit them up. So if you get a fast team against them, I don't think they can handle it. They had a very weak schedule. They played 2 good games. One against Michigan State without their quarterback, and they lost. And the second was the Rose Bowl, which they got killed. So again, I'm not sold on Iowa. I think Michigan State is next, is better than Iowa. Michigan State, the new quarterback. I watched the spring practice. He looks very good. I don't think there'll be a drop-off. Connor Cook should have went much higher in the draft. He's probably the best quarterback next to Doherty of West Kentucky in the draft. But they have 2 returning starters on offense, which again I don't buy because the running back and a couple of linemen and the receivers. I'm not worried about State. 5 back on defense. They lost Shalik Calhoun, who was a stud defensive end, but they'll replace him. And I think their key is their secondary. You got to keep an eye on that. It's been weak since Darcus Denard left. They'll have a very strong running back, and their offensive line has an All-American Allen on it, so they'll still be good. And their defense, they have an All-American in the line and at linebacker. So we'll see what happens. They're a little bit young, well coached. Their average was 30 offense and 21 defense last year for the same as Iowa. And again, they're an over and an under team. I think if State plays Michigan, I think that's more of an under game. But again, their secondary is a little weak. So if they play a really good passing team, I think they're going to have trouble. Like maybe in Indiana, Ohio State they might have trouble with. Next is Northwestern, returning quarterback. 5 offense and 6 defense returning. Strong running team, strong defensive team. I look at them as an under. Let's have a laugh. Big Ten team. They average 19 points on offense and 18 on defense. Beautiful under team. So they'll play tough, and they don't know how to score. Next is Nebraska. Tommy Armstrong back. Very good quarterback, very explosive. 5-5 offense and defense returning. Good pass, average defense. I look at them as an over. They averaged 33 and 28 last year, but I think they're an over with Armstrong with another year. He's a very mobile quarterback, and they really don't have a great defense. So I look for those games to be over against the certain teams, like Ohio State over, Michigan probably an over. Again, Iowa and Michigan State we have to see more of. Wisconsin, new quarterback again, 4-4 back offensive defense, weak secondary, good running, young team, an under. They average 27 and 13. I look for them to be an under team. They're just going to pound it against LSU. I think once we ever get a line, I think the play there is under. I don't. They're going to play defense and stop the run, and off they go. So very consistent, but an under team. Penn State, new quarterback, weak offense, weak secondary, average defense, 7 returning on offense, 5 on defense. Definitely an under team. They were 23 and 21 last year was their average. I look at the 23 to drop. I still remember the Temple game. I bet Temple, and everybody's looking at me like I'm nuts, and Temple wins the game straight out 27-10. They just don't have an offense, and even their defense is average. So they're just a weak team. There's nothing about them. Minnesota, returning quarterback, 6 returning on offense, 5 on defense. Very balanced offense. They lost their coach, so this is going to be a little different. They averaged 22 and 25 last year. I look at them as probably an under team in conference. They open with Oregon State, probably an under game because Oregon State's got a weak offense. Again, you got to see what the over-under. You can't look at the game first and say, oh, I'm going to bet it under or over. You have to look at it with the line. And then you look, like I was looking at baseball today, and there's an over at 10 and an over at 7. So I'd much rather like the over at 7 than the over at 10. You got to, give up too much. So here, if I got to give 70 points in an over game versus 55, I'd rather play the 55 over. Illinois, Westlunt back as quarterback, really good quarterback. New coach in Lovie Smith. I don't get that. I don't think he's all that great of a coach. 5 offense and 4 defense returning starters. Good passing team. Balanced offense. Probably more of an over. They average 22 and 23. They'll probably score. Indiana, new quarterback, 6 returning offense, 7 defense, spread offense, no defense. They averaged 36 and 37 last year. They're definitely an over team. Lock over Indiana, Ohio State. Lock over Indiana, Nebraska. And those are the couple that are very clear. We'll see how the quarterbacks develop at Iowa, Michigan State, Northwestern. But right now, those are your lock over team games. Maryland, returning quarterback, 7 offense, 5 defense back. Balanced offense, good defense. Weak team, 24 and 34 last year, so they have a weak defense. I look at them as an under in most games, but when they play like an Ohio State, you bet Ohio State because they'll score 50 on them. Michigan will shut them out. Michigan State will have a field day on them. So again, you got to watch who they're playing as far as the over/under. Rutgers, returning quarterback, 6 offense, 5 defense back. Very weak team, probably an over. 27 and 34 last year. Just makes them a weak team, and they'll score a lot. Their quarterback's okay. And last is Purdue, returning quarterback, 7 offense and 8 defense back. So they got a lot of guys back. They're just weak. The weak versus the pass. So against Indiana will kill them. And the teams with good quarterbacks. Nebraska, maybe Iowa, Michigan. And they're weak. So basically those are the SEC and the Big Ten. I'll keep it brief. Again, you're looking at matchups. If Alabama plays LSU, it's an under game. Again, watching how the quarterbacks develop. So in college, you get the new quarterback, and you got to give them 3-4 games, and especially against a good team. You can't really judge them against these Division II players. You got to wait for the Division I players. Anybody that plays, like Western Kentucky plays Alabama in the second week, that's going to tell you all you want about the quarterback. They probably won't score a lot, but if he's got a good percentage and they can score 20 points, like last year they scored 20 on LSU, so if they've scored 17 on Alabama, I'd say they got a really good quarterback. So anyway, that's what you're looking for is the matchups. Don't put the line in first. Look at the game. Go, this looks like one team, the other team over or under, and then let's see what the spread is. So always look at the game first without a spread. And you go, this is the Alabama LSU. Okay, no spread. I like the game under, and I like the dog. And I'm going to tease one or the other, whatever looks best. Baylor TCU. I'm going over with the game, depending on what it is, and I like the dog. Now you get the spread thrown in, and now you make your determination. But I always do that with every game. I put my own spread in, my own over-under, and then when the real spread comes in, if it's close, I know where I'm going. If it's not close, then I know which way to, if I say it's a 60 over-under and it comes out at 50, and I like the over, I love the over, then that's how I lock a game at 50. So it's all dependent on that. But the first thing I do is I look at the game and go, do I like a team or I like the dog? And that's the first thing to do. The next thing I do is I look at strong favorites and weak favorites. Like if Rutgers is favorite, that's a weak favorite. Or Maryland, I'm going to take the dog in that game most of the time. Because you don't think they'll even win the game. You take them as a dog. And vice versa, I look at strong dogs. If I get Alabama as a dog or Ohio State or LSU, I love those. Michigan as a dog, Michigan State. Those, you see those as dogs, you're going to jump. Like Oklahoma plays Ohio State. I think it's week 2 or week 3. So my first thing would be take the dog, and I like the over. I have no idea what the over is. I've heard a spread of 10. I'll take Ohio State in 16. I'd have taken, if it was 3, I'd have taken Ohio State in 9. But with 10, you don't even need the teaser. You just take Ohio State. see what the over-under is. I'm guessing 61. You probably go over that because they can't stop Barrett, and Oklahoma can move the ball. So that's what you look at. All right, everybody, this is Howard the Teaser King. I'll be doing more of these shorter videos. Still watch the long one, and you can always pause it, watch 10 minutes of it, and come back. I get into it. I get into my own little world of gambling, and I really talk a lot. So apologize if it's 50's a little too long, but there's a lot of information. Definitely watch it over a couple of days. Anyway, www.teaserking.com. Just a few weeks left, and we'll be back into our heavenly football. All right, everybody, have a nice night. Thank you.